The camera's live. Okay, live. All right. What a. This is why I need to just be in one space, and it's very frustrating. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ignition News. It's great to have you on the show today. I guess we'll start right at the top, which is censorship. The United States military has launched a new battleship, the most state of the art, the most technologically advanced in the world. It is capable of things that we have not ever seen before. And as we enter this new phase of military conflict, both in Iran and on behalf of the state of Israel, I want to let you know that the brand new battleship. It's called the USS Censorship. It is the most powerful weapon that the military in the United States military industrial complex has ever had. The United States Censorship. It is impressive, honestly, to know how much and to look around and to see. I was actually listening to an episode of a comedian on Spotify yesterday who incidentally completely nailed what was about to happen in Iran. And he was just talking about the fact that, I will just say, I know this is not going to be popular when I say this, but the alt right was correct. The far right in America during the 2020 era, 2021, 2022, they were correct. And we didn't want to acknowledge that. Some of us did not want to acknowledge that they were correct because they were not on the same team as us. Yes, that's right. They were being censored, deplatformed, taken off of the internet because they were saying things that the Biden administration did not consider to be correct with their political narrative. And I was wrong not to call that out because I justified that in, I guess, the temporary harm that some of their misinformation was spreading. I and many other people said, oh, misinformation, whatever you want to call it. But the reality is, if you are a Gen X or you're a millennial, you have seen what censorship actually looks like. And we're raising an entire generation of children now who believe and who understand that information is curated, and they have come to tolerate the curation of information. We have allowed this to happen. We have allowed the curation of information to happen. Do you remember the website rotten.com? I mean, you could go look up all kinds of things. The internet at one time was truly a place of information. And I would challenge you that there's not actually an internet anymore. There's not really an internet. What does exist is largely more and more AI slop, but really we don't use the internet. If, Still not better yet. I'm sorry. No, I am not sorry. We don't really have the internet anymore. We have about 5 locations that we go to, and the information that we see on those locations is largely censored and determined by the billionaires that own those platforms. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And everywhere I look, I see voices that I know being silenced. I see people that I know being deplatformed. And I was wrong. I was wrong not to recognize what was happening because the reality is, when we allowed it to happen in 2020, just because we didn't like the other side, that laid the foundation for the deplatforming of information based on the billionaires, as we can see. So, good morning. It is May 1st. Welcome to the Ignition News. It's great to have you. I appreciate everyone for following the show. This is a quick reminder to please find us on your favorite podcast platform, Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For some reason, the podcasting universe remains one of the few places that people can have and communicate information. So let's get into the top stories today. If you're new to the show, we like to give you tangible information, the top stories from my perspective, and then action steps that you can use to go back, fight, and protect your democracy. Let's get right into it. So the first story today is the GDP. For the first time since the end of World War II, the United States debt has crossed 100% of its gross domestic product. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget confirmed the milestone yesterday, citing new data from the BEA, the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Debt held by the public stood at $31.27 trillion. Okay, that's at the end of March. Nominal GDP over the same 12-month window came in at 31.22. So that means that we are at 100% of the GDP in terms of our national debt. Okay. The only time we've ever had this happen was in 1946, and that was right after World War II when the ratio peaked at 106%. But here's the critical difference. Um, we that debt that we are bearing is not coming from one massive global conflict. It is the accumulation of a bunch of bad decisions that have happened in the United States of America. Of course, now the government is spending approximately $1 trillion per year just on interest of the national debt. That number now exceeds the entire defense budget. Incidentally, one in every seven federal dollars out the door, by the way, goes to paying off the debt. So we're not paying for roads or schools or services with that money. It just goes to pay off the debt. Of course, most Americans are burdened with some kind of massive credit card debt as well. So we've kind of baked that into the equation. We are trapping ourselves in a mountain of debt while we are engaging in a massive military conflict, and we haven't even really begun to see the worst of it. I don't think people understand what kind of cliff we're on economically, but we're certainly there. And it's not like we're focusing on the right things. Story number 2 today is while American service members are in harm's way in Iran, Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr. have been just turning the war into business opportunities. So a company called Power US, I don't know, drone manufacturer company, it was founded just last year. It went public through a reverse merger. Okay. A drone company, I think these are called a SPAC, by the way, special purpose acquisition company. Okay. A drone manufacturer went public through a reverse merger with a golf club company. A golf club company. A military drone company just went public in March through a reverse merger with a golf club company. A shell company backed by Don and Eric agreed to merge with a major tungsten mine in Kazakhstan that received $1.6 billion in U.S. government support last year. Okay, the timeline here is worth walking through, I think. So you've got Kazakhstan's president telling Donald Trump directly that he intended to award the tungsten contract to a United States company, right? That story hits the press on October 21st. October 28th, Don and Eric had added nearly $24 million to their investment vehicle in the deal. October 31st, that vehicle paid $20 million for a 20% stake in the mine and the $1.6 billion contract. A representative for Don Jr. said he had, quote, no knowledge of his father's dealings with the prior investment, describing him as, quote, a passive investor. Interesting. So you've got the sons of the president investing $20 million to get a 20% stake in a $1.6 billion mining contract. What do these two have what knowledge do these two have of tungsten mining? What is their expertise in this area specifically? Of course, we know that the president's family has pocketed $1.8 billion in cash and gifts since the second term began. I've actually seen much higher numbers than that. That's a very conservative estimate. And listen, I actually try to avoid using the Trump name on my show here because I actually think our problems are bigger than one person or bigger than one family in particular. But this is a symptom of the rot in the United States of America. And the Trump family is not the only family that is doing this. We are allowing this to happen. And it actually just clues into the last story that we're going to talk about today. Okay. And that is the Voting Rights Act. And I didn't talk about the Voting Rights Act on the day that it happened. Number one, because I really wanted to absorb what happened. Number two is there's a lot of, honestly, like Black Americans who are more qualified to speak on this and more qualified to speak from how it impacts them specifically. But now the time has passed. And one of the other reasons that I haven't talked about what happened with the Voting Rights Act is as follows. Normally, when I talk about very bad news, I like to sit with that bad news. I like to present that information to you. And then I like to say, okay, it's very, very bad, but, or specifically, and. I try not to say but. And I like to say, yeah, this is a disastrous thing that just happened. And here is what we can do about it. But the reality is, what happened to the Voting Rights Act, what happened with the Supreme Court is devastating, and we will not recover from it in our adult lifetimes. And I don't think people are really willing to tell you something that blunt, that factual, and to just be that honest with you. What happened to the Voting Rights Act and how it will impact us is politically devastating. The far right in this country has just won a decades-long battle to disenfranchise voters, and they won. And the Democrats now, even now, don't even have the spine to tell you that. They want to fluff up and, oh, everything's bad. This is terrible, terrible, terrible. But what they think they can do with this is they think they can utilize this as another feather in their cap. That's been the political strategy of Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. The strategy of Hakeem Jeffries has been throw as many Americans on the stove of suffering as possible and hope that enough people from the sidelines do not get burned, that they get angry enough to go vote for Democrats in the midterms, while they have done nothing to protect the very election infrastructure necessary as fucking indexed by this fucking case. Sorry, I've really been swearing more. I'm not really a swearer. This is not the only failure of the Democratic institution and their lack of imagination in protecting your voting rights. Everything is on the line in the midterm elections, but the reality is I haven't talked about what happened at the Supreme Court because nobody has been quite willing to tell you the truth, which is this is devastating. It will be devastating for decades. We actually may never recover from this in the time that you will be alive on the planet. We know that Republicans are already threatening to redraw district lines before 2028. These lines could eliminate 19 House seats by Democrats held by Black representatives. But one of the reasons I kept my mouth shut on this is I wanted to analyze what could be done. And so I want you to know that I actually do think that something can be done, but it is going to require balls. Excuse my language. If we are going to open this up, if we are going to open up the can, the gerrymandering can, as you will, then Democrats have to start acting like we're actually in the constitutional battle that they constantly lecture us that they are. If Democrats actually act, they could counter this particular redistricting by redrawing lines to gain 22 additional congressional seats before heading into 2028. If Democrats move aggressively in states where they control levers, the analysts that I've seen is quite clear. Even if Democrats flip 0 additional legislative chambers, they can redraw 10 districts in states where they already hold the trifecta. That trifecta is in New York, Colorado, Oregon, and Maryland. If they flip chambers in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania, that number could go from 10 to 22. Wisconsin is the best example of this. Republicans hold 6 of the state's 8 congressional districts, but Wisconsin is an evenly divided state. Democrats have been outperforming in special elections there, and analysis of this is quite clear. They can flip the chambers, and they can make these changes. But before I discuss that, I want to zoom out to tell you that that's a tactical solution to this problem. Excuse me. So when Democrats say, well, what can we do? What can we can't really do anything, I guess. We can't do anything. We don't have power. I'm going to have to clip that out. The problem is not what Democrats can or cannot do. The problem is that Democrats have failed to have a political imagination to deliver anything of substance to the American people. This is not a problem of policy or the Supreme Court. This is a problem of a Democratic Party that has been unwilling to deliver anything politically for its people. The Affordable Care Act was actually, I think, one of the worst things to happen to American healthcare. I've talked about this extensively. Barack Obama was one of the most politically devastating presidents to the Democratic Party in the history of the country, and we celebrate Barack Obama as somehow the best political dynamo in the Democratic Party infrastructure. Why do I say that? Why do I say that? Why was Barack Obama the worst president politically for the Democratic Party? It's quite simple. Because during Barack Obama's tenure, state seats across the country lost 900 Democratic state seats. The actual levers of power, the people in your state who decide the funding for your school, who decide how many libraries you're going to have, who decide how much taxes billionaires pay in your states, the people who decide what to invest in healthcare, infrastructure, development, that was gutted. 900 people, 900 representatives. And that is not because Barack Obama was a particularly bad person. It is because he was a particularly bad imaginator, whatever you say. I don't know. Imagineer. There we go. And he thought, as his party now still thinks, that we can govern incrementally. While thinking we can govern incrementally, the Republicans have come in and taken everything. And so we can talk about congressional districts. We can engage for the next 50 years. One seat gets stolen here. And that's what it is, by the way. All of a sudden now Democrats like gerrymandering because the Republicans are doing gerrymandering. But before, oh my God, we would never gerrymander. But now it's, oh, it's cool. We're going to gerrymander. It's fun. So we can spend the next 50 years stealing someone's congressional because that's what we're doing. The best answer here is to have nonpartisan congressional districts. That should be the standard. But no, we've been pulled into the mud with the piggies. And because we've been pulled into the mud, now the plan is to spend the next 50 years stealing one congressional seat here, giving up 2 here, taking 3 there, giving 1 back here, when the actual answer to this problem is to have policy, progressive populist policy for the working class that dominates the political conversation. Conversation like, we will no longer fund Israel. Do you understand where the base of not just the Democratic Party is, but the country is right now? That we cannot stomach the idea that we're sending money to perpetrate a genocide? If someone were to say, we will not do this anymore, it will not matter if you are a Republican. It will not matter if you are a Democrat. People have a moral conscience. If you were to say, we're going to have universal health care, it does not matter if you're a Republican. It does not matter if you're a Democrat. If you were to say we're going to actually tax these billionaires, we're going to tax them on the wealth that they say that they've. If Elon Musk says he is the richest person in the world because he is the first trillionaire, then guess what, buddy? Alternative minimum tax. Pay up. You don't get to perpetrate these little scams. You don't get to say I'm the richest person in my neighborhood and then not pay your taxes. You don't get to do that. So why does Musk and Bezos and all of these people, why do they get to take out these massive loans? They get to take out loans on their stock. They get to run around the world in their $500 million yachts, pay no taxes, while you and your school, your kid's teacher is buying school supplies, or you're having a little fundraiser, a little GoFundMe. Or your neighbor has cancer and all of a sudden you're putting up on Facebook, my neighbor has cancer, they can't afford their bills, they're going to lose their house. Why are we doing this? We're not going to solve these problems by stealing a congressional district here, or by limping along to the election there, or by stealing or giving away a congressional district there. That is not going to solve the problem. And if Democrats don't start thinking differently, but more specifically, if you don't start demanding differently, it's only going to get worse. So if they tell you nothing can be done, I already built I built the blueprint. It's there. You can go to Substack, go download the blueprint, show your congressional representative. Some guy in Las Vegas made a blueprint of how we take these seats back. What do you mean you can't do anything? And the final message is you have to get used to losing. And this might be the most uncomfortable thing that I've said in a while, but the reality is you have to buckle down and stop voting for the lesser of two evils, even if it means that you lose. Even if it means that you lose. You have to be willing to build coalitions to take political power, but more importantly, to deny political power to elected representatives who are not willing to give you what you need. And that might mean that we lose. That might mean you lose a House seat or a governorship. Because power is the only dynamic in conversation these people understand. If you continue this idea, oh, I'm going to vote for Kamala, she's the lesser of two evils. You have voted yourself for the lesser of two evils into this situation, and now the Supreme Court just stole voting rights from millions of people. The Republican Party has been willing to lose a seat here or a seat there for the last 70 years. And when they lose the seat, they go into the community and they network and they organize and they get people outraged and they get people upset and they build power one person at a time, 10, 15, 20, 30 people, 300 people, 3,000 people, and then they take another one. They were willing to lose in order to build and amass this power. And I know this might seem like, oh, this is just a conversation about shitting on the Democrats. Okay. What have they done for you lately? You have terrible health care. You've lost your reproductive rights. The Supreme Court has just gutted voting rights. The economy is terrible. Everything Joe Biden did was gutted by executive order, and the few projects of the Inflation Reduction Act that did survive executive orders have been claimed by Republicans like they're the ones that did it. The president is putting his name and face on the passport. Apparently, they're working on currency as well. By the end of this, I wouldn't be surprised if they put his face on, what's it called? Mount Rushmore. We keep allowing ourselves to be represented by weak little men. And the result of this is that we keep getting stepped on and stomped on. And they have convinced us, oh, but if you lose, oh, we could lose. We might lose. You fucking lost everything. You have lost everything. Do you think your children will be able to easily afford to get a house or go to college or have their own children? This isn't about losing a congressional seat. This is about finally demanding our power back. The blueprint will be uploaded to Substack as a component of today's episode. That's the Ignition News, everybody. The question is not, can we have power? Can we regain power for the people? It is, how much are we willing to work for to get it back? It's a thought for you. That's the show, everybody.